Wicked, the biggest movie of 2024, one of the most well-known musicals of all time, has a pretty ableist history. Now, don't get me wrong, this does not diminish the good that this story has done, but in today's day and age, we need to talk about how good the disability representation actually is. Because not only is the story ableist, so is the history of casting the one disabled character, the center of this video, Nessarose. Today, we will be taking a look at Nessarose's history, from the original book to the Broadway show to the recently released blockbuster film. There will be spoilers in this video, and kind of have been already if you're paying close enough attention, but if you don't want to be spoiled, please click away now. Before we move forward, let's get the basics of the story down. It's the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West, Elphaba, and Glinda the Good. We meet them at school and get to see their friendship. Nessa is Elphaba's younger sister, and later becomes the Wicked Witch of the East, whose bedazzled shoes peek out from underneath Dorothy's house later in The Wizard of Oz. Now, starting at the beginning with Nessa's family tree. Stay with me, this book is a trip. The Nessarose we meet in Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, is born to Melina Throp and Frexbar the Godly without arms. The book hints that the reason behind this limb difference is that her mother was so scared of her next child coming out green, like Elphaba, that she took medicine from a fortune teller. Interestingly, the book seems to make fun of the idea that disabilities could be punishments from God due to moral failings. So, I appreciated that at least. Melina had an affair with a man named Turtleheart, while her husband and Nessa's adopted father, Frexbar, was away on church business. He's a minister. But when he comes back, he falls for Turtleheart too, and so they kind of just form a throuple. But while Elphaba and Nessa are kids, Turtleheart is killed by an angry mob. So her mother and father decide to become missionaries. This is until her mother sadly dies, delivering her last child, Shell. So growing up, Frexbar spoils Nessa because she is the last reminder he has of both his lost loves. Now, because of her lack of arms, Nessa has some problems with her balance and is always cared for by their childhood nanny. When we first meet her, she's joining Elphaba and Glinda at Shiz University. Practically every sentence about her before this point is about how unfortunate her existence is for everyone around her. Before she even enters the book, the C slur is used for her. And Madame Morrible tells Glinda that she'd hate rooming with Nessa due to her disability. We quickly find that Nessa is an extremely elegant and devout woman. Her father gifts her the iconic silver slippers. Everything else we are told about her emphasizes how well she does at hiding her deformities. She's stylish and elegant. In fact, Glinda seems to think that this almost makes up for her being a burden on everyone around her. The book literally refers to her as a broken doll of a baby sister. Elphaba takes care of Nessa. She seems to think it's her responsibility. Nessa is shown as a demanding, self-righteous disabled person, and it's portrayed as an injustice that Elphaba should have to take care of her. Throughout the rest of the book, we see Madame Morrible, a headmistress at Shiz University, try to brainwash her alongside Glinda and Elphaba to become sorceresses and work under the Wizard of Oz. While Elphaba runs away, Nessa and Glinda do go through this training and become pawns of the wizard. However, Nessa is so saddened by Elphaba's disappearance that she sinks deeper and deeper into her religious beliefs. She ends up taking her grandfather's place as the leader of Munchkinland, but it soon turns into an oppressive dictatorship. Yeah, that's right, Nessa goes on a full power trip. Munchkinland secedes from Oz, she prohibits animals from speaking, and rips up the yellow brick road. This all earns her the nickname, the Wicked Witch of the East. One day, Glinda shows up and magics the silver slippers from her father. This gives her the ability to walk without assistance, which she hadn't been able to do before. This actually empowers her to start using magic more, and she uses it to kill off people her villagers don't like. I don't even know what to say about that. When she reunites with Elphaba, she promises to leave the shoes to her when she dies. Soon after this, she becomes the former Wicked Witch of the East. Dorothy enters Oz, the house squashes Nessa, and Dorothy takes the shoes. Elphaba spends the rest of the book and her life obsessing over the shoes that signified her father's love. This book is undoubtedly the worst offender when it comes to ableism. There's a video by Sydney Zarlengo where they make the argument that this book is written as a companion to The Wizard of Oz, and the language and stereotypes included are all done so to create the feel of a period piece. I found their argument really interesting, and I really suggest that you go check out their video. But I don't exactly agree that the book had to have harmful elements to have the feel of a period piece. Whether or not it was intended, this is undoubtedly harmful rhetoric to the disability community. The stereotype that disabled people are helpless burdens on those around them are just plain awful. Disabled people are humans, full of wants and needs, capable of living a full life. There's a trend throughout the different versions of Wicked where Nessa feels unsatisfied with her disability and looks for cures through magic. Hoping for a cure is something that many disabled people do. However, wanting to be no longer disabled is overdone, poor disability rep, in my opinion. For these many reasons, I would say that Nessarose in The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West is not good disability representation. In the musical, Nessa is the younger sister of Elphaba and the daughter of the governor of Munchkinland. When her mother was pregnant with her, her father had her chew milk flowers in the hopes that she wouldn't come out green like Elphaba. These made her deliver Nessa early with her legs all tangled up. Because of this, Elphaba blames herself for Nessa's disability. Unlike the book, Nessa is a wheelchair user instead of not having arms, likely to make it easier for abled actors to portray her on stage. Nessa is still doted on by her father and sent to Shiz University, with Elphaba only being sent along to act as her caregiver. Her father gives the silver slippers to the future governor of Munchkinland. Nessa is focused on how her life hasn't really started yet and hasn't taken the time to stop and wonder, oh, maybe Elphaba's life also hasn't really started yet. In the stage show, their dynamic is very much Elphaba big sister, Nessa little sister. Elphaba is here to take care of Nessa. And this dynamic does not change as they grow up. Going to Shiz is for Nessa's benefit, and while she's excited when Elphaba is welcomed by Madame Morrible, Nessa is so distracted. Her only concern is worrying about being an outcast again, that she only really thinks about how Elphaba's actions will reflect back on her. So when they arrive and Elphaba causes a scene using magic on Nessa's chair, Nessa is not so happy about that. We also need to remember Nessa's chair is an extension of her body, so using magic on it like this is taking away her bodily autonomy. I mean, I'd probably be pretty mad if someone magicked my chair too. Okay, so skipping to Dancing Through Life, everyone at Shiz is opening up and having fun, except for Nessa. She spends the majority of the time looking longingly at the people dancing. When Glinda tricks Bach into inviting Nessa, it is with the words, "See that tragically beautiful girl, the one in the chair." Even when complimenting Nessa, it's a backhanded one. I hate this line so much. She goes on to say how Bach would be her hero if he invited her. Why is it heroic to ask a disabled person out? Glinda is so cruel in this moment, and most people barely acknowledge it, but it makes me so mad. After this, Nessa tells Elphaba that she is so excited she's about to have the first happy night of my life. And then when Bach goes to tell Nessa why he really asked her out, she says, I know why. It's because I'm in this chair and you felt sorry for me. They dance, meaning he takes control of her chair and kind of wheels her through everyone. And she has one moment where she's like, yay! And then she's gone the rest of the time. It's supposed to be this happy moment for Nessa, but when it's Bach controlling the chair and taking her bodily autonomy again, like, it's supposed to be a nice gesture, but I'm not sure it reads as a happy moment from a disabled perspective. Dancing Through Life is a bop, but it gets an F for ableism. When Elphaba goes off to the Emerald City, Nessa and Bach come to say goodbye at the train station. Nessa tells Elphaba that she's so proud of her, but after Glinda says that Bach will take care of Nessa, Bach storms off, prompting Glinda to say that maybe he's not the right one for her. And Nessa says, he's the one, I'm the one that's not right. And that's the last we see of Nessa in Act 1. At the beginning of Act 2, we meet Nessa as the new governor of Munchkinland after her father died of shame when Elphaba became an enemy of Oz. When Elphaba comes to her, Nessa refuses to harbor a fugitive and criticizes Elphaba for not using her magic to cure Nessa's disability. She says, you fly around Oz trying to rescue animals you've never even met, and not once have you ever thought to use your powers to rescue me. In response, Elphaba enchants the silver slippers, turning them to ruby slippers, and giving them the ability to help Nessa walk. Elphaba is so glad that her powers finally did something good. But Nessa rushes to let Bach know, thinking that now that she can walk, she and Bach will be happy together. When Bach comes and sees Elphaba though, he becomes afraid. Elphaba tells him that she won't hurt him, but he says that all she and Nessa do is lie. He exclaims that Nessa is as wicked as you are. He tells us that Nessa has been slowly stripping away the rights of Munchkin, trapping them in Munchkinland to keep Bach from leaving her. When Bach sees that Nessa can walk again, he's delighted because he thinks that Nessa will be fine and can have anyone now that she can walk. So Bach leaving to go tell Glinda that he loves her won't mean as much. But Nessa says he must love her no matter what. You will lose your heart to me. She grabs Elphaba's grimoire and starts reciting a spell from it, but she doesn't know what she's doing and ends up shrinking Bach's heart. The only way Elphaba can save him is by stepping in and turning him into the Tin Man. Even though she stepped in and saved him, Nessa blames Elphaba for all of this happening. Still, she tries to stop Elphaba from leaving, and Elphaba says, I have done everything I could for you, and it hasn't been enough, and nothing ever would be. Bach wakes up as the Tin Man, and Nessa screams that it was Elphaba. It was all Elphaba. And that's the last we see of Nessa before Dorothy's house lands on her. The musical also gets a bad disability representation score, and we haven't even talked about the fact that no one has played Nessa in the stage show who actually has a disability. In the musical, Nessa's life is fully controlled by her own self-pity. And honestly, that's the hardest part to watch as a fellow disabled person. She hates her life so incredibly much and thinks that she will never deserve love. So she ends up manipulating everything possible to keep the one person who showed any interest in her. One of the most controversial parts of Nessa's storyline is the magical cure. The disabled community as a whole is very against magical cure storylines, especially when that cure is the thing that the character wants most in the world. These storylines often show that a person cannot be happy if they're disabled. And while Nessa's story shows that a magical cure will not magically fix your life, it's still ableist to show that Nessa's life was just waiting to be cured. When I last saw the musical, I saw a little kid in a wheelchair, and I felt so bad that they'd seen such terrible disability rep. I couldn't help but leave feeling awful about being disabled myself, but from a kid's standpoint, like, that child deserves better. The movie is very similar to the musical, except with many of the most ableist parts taken out. Nessa is once again a wheelchair user due to her mother's fear of her being green. She's doted on by her father and bullied by local children, though it shows Elphaba standing up for the both of them. She arrives at Shiz University as the only sister who is enrolled and ready for a new life. They put in a couple lines here specifically about Nessa not needing anyone else's help, which was nice. She's completely independent, but her father forces Elphaba to follow her and make sure she gets settled all right. She follows Nessa to the orientation, where Nessa gets to share a first moment with Bach. Both of them have trouble seeing through the crowds, which was really cute, but would make a lot more sense if Bach was actually played by a little person. After the orientation, the headmistress comes over to personally welcome Nessa as the governor's daughter, but she takes control of her chair without permission. Both Nessa and Elphaba try to tell her that Nessa doesn't need help. She can get around perfectly fine by herself. But the headmistress does not listen. Elphaba gets worked up and her magic flares, causing Nessa in her chair to fly into the air and to Elphaba. Nessa is rightfully frightened, but also really disappointed in Elphaba for, ruining her first day. Later, after Dr. Dillman's class is interrupted, you get to see this interaction between Nessa and Elphaba. That's really nice. Nessa kind of looks at Elphaba like, hey, are you okay? It's really nice to see that Nessa got to check in on Elphaba just like Elphaba checks in on Nessa. It's a tiny interaction that you only see if you're really looking for it, but there's a quote in the book that says, Nessa never learned to care for others because she never learned to care for herself. This interaction shows that that's not true of this Nessa. She's more of a well-rounded character who's able to have more complex relationships with other people. This Nessa gets to take care of Elphaba just as Elphaba takes care of her. In Dancing Through Life, Glinda once again tells Bach to take Nessa, a tragically beautiful girl, in a chair. Nessa tells Elphaba about the dance, and they change the line from the first happy night of my life, which is just so unnecessary, to the happiest night of my life. She's all cute and excited. You get to see Nessa and Bach run for the boat to catch with the rest of the students. Everyone cheers when they see her coming. It's a really cute moment. It made me a little emotional. We still have that moment with Bach where she is like, I know why you asked me. It's because I'm in this chair and you felt sorry for me. But she says it in such a different way. It's so much less self-pitying and more annoyed at the circumstances, like understanding that, yeah, other people are going to pity her, but she doesn't have to pity herself, I feel like was really important. Bach says no, he doesn't pity her, she's great, which I thought an easy, simple little change that made such a difference to the scene. But now we get to the part of the movie that everyone has been hating Nessa for. Elphaba comes in and everyone's laughing at her, and Nessa just sits there and says, I can't watch. And a lot of people were like, you're her sister. But at the same time, they're both very complex characters. Nessa has shown up to this point that all that she wants is to be treated like a normal person because she is a normal person. Elphaba and Nessa are both outcasts with a history of being bullied, and they both end up disappointing each other at some point in the movie. In this moment, Nessa thinks that she's finally being accepted and getting to live like a normal, happy life. She doesn't want to give that up. Sad as it is to watch a sister not standing up for her sister, I see why she hesitated. I don't think it automatically makes her a villain to have not stood up for Elphaba. I just think it makes her a little cowardly. Moving on, we see Nessa proudly send off Elphaba at the train station again. Her father is there. We get to have a moment where she introduces her father to Bach. When we see Bach fawn over Glinda again, Nessa wheels away very upset. Finally, the last time we see Nessa in the movie is as Madame Morrible is telling everyone over the radio that Elphaba is an enemy of Oz. She cries and turns around as her father collapses, and this is the last thing that we see from her in the film. The physicality of Nessa is so different in the movie from the stage show. Not only does she look more at home in her chair than any of the Nessas I've seen over the years, but she is open, excited, interacting with the world. She is an active participant in her life. On top of that, Elphaba is in no way a caregiver to Nessa in the movie. They have an equal give and take, with Elphaba acting as an ally to Nessa. For these reasons, I believe that the film gives us the best disability representation. On top of what we see on screen from this character, the film team also made sure to make all of the sets accessible, even for scenes that Nessa isn't in. There's also another wheelchair user in the ensemble, which I feel like adds a lot. Even just being a non-speaking part, getting to see multiple wheelchair users just living their lives is really important, I think. Most importantly, this was the first time that a authentically disabled person got to play the role of Nessarose. By this point in time, it has been running on Broadway since 2003. It's had 2 US tours, ran on West End, and had 3 UK and Ireland tours. That's a lot of opportunities to cast a disabled Nessa. Ambulatory wheelchair users exist and would be able to do the part with no changes. It was 11 years ago that I first saw the musical Wicked. I was an able-bodied 14-year-old whose mother took me to see the touring production in San Francisco. It was one of the most impactful shows of my life. It really started my love of musical theater, which was my whole life as a teenager. I had no idea that 2 years later I would end up getting sick and being disabled for the rest of my life. But even not being disabled, I'm sure that I took in that disability representation and internalized some of that fear. As a disabled teenager, I too thought that I was unlovable unless I could be cured. And maybe if I could have grown up with better representation in media, I wouldn't have thought that. In conclusion, can I say that Wicked is no longer ableist? Well, I wouldn't say that about the book, and as of January 2025, no changes have been made to the stage show, nor has any kind of open casting call for disabled actors to play Nessa come out. I am hopeful that these things might still happen in the future, maybe after part 2 gets released, but as of right now, I can't say that the stage show is not ableist. And finally, do I think that the movie is not ableist? Yes, this could change retroactively depending on what happens in part 2, but as of right now, I think that the Wicked movie did a great job of turning a really ableist narrative around with proper representation and a few small changes. I applaud Marissa Bodie, who was great in the role, and it sounds like she did a lot of work behind the scenes in turning around the narrative, and also the director, John Chu, who really prioritized accessibility. Also, when the stage show inevitably goes looking for wheelchair users to play Nessa, you know where to find me. Okay, remember to like, subscribe, follow, and all that jazz. I love you all, abled or disabled, and I'll see you real soon. Okay, bye!